Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. The show's about to start. We've got plenty to discuss. Not a single Democrat voted to protect the rights of women in sports. We've got a solution for you and for Travis Hunter, who wants to play both wide receiver and defensive back in the NFL. And Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC's future. Maybe a moment worth noting. All of that and more straight ahead. Here on Hot Mic, while you're here at the OutKick YouTube page, we'll hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. I was optimistic. Talking with Paula Scanlon yesterday here on Hot Mic, I thought we could find the votes. I thought we would find enough Democrats on the opposite side of the aisle who would use the common sense aspect of what the Protect Women and Girls in Sports Act was all about. But not one Democrat senator voted to protect women's sports from males. Transgender athletes competing against women, and it was all party line. Much like we have seen in the whole saga of the lack of common sense, the vote was party line instead of for the rights of women. I don't know how we can't view it through that lens. I hear a lot about, well, it's not undermining women's rights. It is protecting the mental health of individuals. It's not excluding those who are different than you are. I am all for the rights of any American. Transgender, I'm not against anyone having the same rights as I do as an American citizen. What I'm against is the competition aspect of this and how unfair it is and the lack of common sense in that thought. And knowing that both sides can come together on this. In fact, the vast majority of the country agrees with this policy, this line of thinking, that no, transgenders should not compete against the opposite sex. Males should not compete against females. We should not be seeing this where we lean to that side of the argument instead of the common sense lane. Nearly 80% of the country believes this. Over 60% of Democrats don't believe that transgenders should be competing against women in athletics. But yet here we are. We've seen a great response to this issue. OutKick's covered it throughout. And one of the events we covered was the Take Back Title IX tour with Riley Gaines, who you can read at OutKick.com, Paula Scanlon, and many, many more. That Chad and I and OutKick had and it was an honor to be there and see their story, hear their discussion points, and see how many people showed up to rally behind the issue that, quite frankly, should not be an issue today, except we have votes like we did yesterday. Paula came on the show yesterday. Paula Scanlon, who, of course, swam at Penn, a collegiate athlete, and, well, has her personal story about Leah Thomas, who was a teammate of hers, dressed in the women's locker room, won a national title, tied with Riley Gaines. We know that story. Since then, Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlon, I would say, are the two faces of this march towards common sense policy. And even she was pessimistic about yesterday's vote. I was more optimistic than she was when she came on the show, where I had to ask her about her reaction if the vote didn't go the common sense way. You know, the topic that we have always discussed, Chad and I, is like, why is it so difficult to get legislation passed on something that the American people want? And I mean, it's common sense. You know, that's the thing. It's there's two genders, and men should not be competing against women in competition. So I'm looking at it from that angle, but yet, what does it say if it doesn't pass the Senate floor?
I mean, it'll say we still have work to be done. Obviously, it's just sad though, because again, I think if you look at the polls, it's almost 70% of Democrats.
Yes.
It's like 67% of Democrats. I just saw this say that they don't want men and women's sports. That is the majority of Democrats, not the majority of the American people, which we already know we have. The majority of Democrats do not want this. And yet these politicians are sitting up there in Washington, D.C. and voting against the interests of the people that they're supposed to represent.
Voting against the voting people that they're supposed to represent. Well, why? I don't understand this side of it. And much like we're seeing in sports today, especially when men compete against women, it seems as though the Democrats will tuck and run, not to the finish line, but to the party line. And I asked Paula why that is.
We are looking at states like Pennsylvania. I'm actually coming in today from Pennsylvania myself. John Fetterman is a senator from Pennsylvania. I'm curious how he votes because Pennsylvania went to Trump, and I went through my experience at the University of Pennsylvania. I know for a fact the people of Pennsylvania are upset and angry about what I went through, and I'm very curious to see how he votes because again, he's from a state that has majority of Trump supporters, right? Because they went that way, and yet he might not vote for something that all of the people in his state, or majority of the people in his state rather, want. And again, I think it's sad.
I take it as a vote against women's rights. I mean, is that too broad?
No, I think it is. And I think we need to be calling out every single one of these senators that campaigned saying that they're a women's rights activist, whatever the heck that even means. They don't even know what the word means. And call them out and say, okay, you're saying that you are, but you think that you want your daughter to undress in a locker room with a fully grown 6'4" tall man 18 times per week, which is what my teammates and I were subjected to. I mean, I'd love to see them defend it, and they just say it's not happening, or they just call you a bigot, or they say you're disgusting and hateful. But it's gross. Nobody should go through that, and especially not young girls, which is what we're starting to see happen in this country. It's not college-age girls that are going through this. There are young girls that are being forced to undress with men in locker rooms, which is disgusting.
It is, and I can't see it through any other lens than it's against women's rights in this. You're standing up for something that doesn't stand for that. Males jump approximately 25% higher than females. Males throw about 25% further than females. Males run approximately 11% faster than females. They accelerate around 20% faster than females. They punch 30 to 162% harder than females. And males are around 30% stronger than females, equivalent stature and mass. Those are facts. That is science. We're seeing that. It's biology. Why can't that get through the heads, the minds, the logic of those that are voting to speak on behalf of American citizens? Beyond me. Unless there was something else that was keeping them from voting in the way of the American people, something that we didn't know. I certainly wouldn't know what else is in that bill. I asked Paula if she did. Is there something on this bill other than what I'm thinking it is that is keeping people from voting that they can point to and say, well, we want this out?
No, it's just that it's the stance of the Democrats to just not support this. I mean, even on the House side, we saw this in the House back in January now, and it got 2 Democrats to support it. And I remember celebrating this and being like, wow, oh my gosh, bipartisan support. This didn't happen the last time. And then I looked again and I realized there were 208 Democrats that voted no.
Right.
So it's like,
where's the 60% Democrats that are against this?
They can't. They're not in Congress, and that's what sucks. Because they're held hostage by this formal stance of their party, and the stance of the Democrat Party is to still say we support our whatever and mentally ill men in competing in women's sports, and they're dying on that hill, and they've doubled down on it. We watch the left-wing media continue to talk about this issue. They're doubling down on this.
What they've doubled down, and I believe both sides doubled down on the political and politicizing this topic and issue. It'll no doubt come down and come up in the State of the Union, and for good reason. We saw it National Women's Day with President Trump and the view of the women behind him, the young girls representing the past, present, and future of women's rights. It was fantastic. But I think initially it was, oh, you're against the rights of American citizens who want to identify as something, they believe in something, they want to compete, but you're against them having the rights to do so. And I say you, I'm talking about anyone that would be vocally or privately stating their stance on transgender athletes competing in the opposite sex sport. It's not against the rights as a whole. It's about athletic competition in this regard. It's not about do they have the right to do something that I would do on a common day, average day as a citizen of this country. No, absolutely not. They should have the same rights as me or anyone. But when it comes to just the simple science and stance of what we're actually discussing here, we tend to overlook that and argue about something much greater. In this case, it is the response that I have to hear and understand is, how is this not about protecting women's rights? If you're standing up on behalf of women, protecting women across the country, how is this not a slap in the face to that? I explain that to me. When the vast majority of the country would stand and say, no, this isn't fair. This isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't want my child competing against a man. I wouldn't want a transgender female dressing in the locker room. No, we're not with my daughter. That's happening. And I think, in fact, I know the response I hear a lot, and I understand it. I've been affected by this in my family, is the mental health aspect of an individual. Well, suicide rates are higher, transgender people, person to person. That may well be true, and I don't like that. I'm not trying to demean anyone here, but have we asked about the mental health of the female athletes who are competing against them, or being told you're going to just put up with this, or stay quiet on the issue, don't speak up, or sacrifice games? How many forfeits have we seen from collegiate athletes who just don't want to compete in this regard because they have no other outlet to do so, to speak their mind or be heard on an issue from both sides? Got to do better than that. We are right there at the finish line, but we have to have the politicians listen to those that they serve and those that voted them in office and put this issue behind us, because it's common sense. We're close. We're not there. And Paula knew it yesterday. I was more optimistic than I should have been. But I want to stay optimistic on it, because where we were versus where we are, we can finally move forward with, what's right. And what's right is women compete against women. And they're not subjected to what Paula and others have been, feeling uncomfortable in a locker room. Speaking of the locker room, there's a player that's going to enter the NFL who says he is a two-way position in the National Football League. He's going to play corner or wide receiver. He's designated defensive back at the Combine. Travis Hunter from Colorado, Heisman Trophy winner. He doesn't know how that happened. He was asked about, so who put defensive back next to your name? He has no idea. He wasn't asked, he said. Just one day it was there. But he says he's going to play both wide receiver and corner, and he knows he can do it. I can't stand in the way of someone with that type of confidence who has also proven it at the level that he has. He won a Heisman Trophy, playing 112 snaps on average per game. And when you add all of that up, it's more or less he played 2 full seasons last year in one season. I think that leads to I would be optimistic if I draft Travis Hunter that he's less likely to hit a rookie wall, meaning at some point of the season when you reach that point where you're used to kind of like going more into rest mode. Maybe you're going into the bowl season and you've got a long rest, and December you're cranking up in the NFL for playoff time. Sometimes you see fatigue. I don't think Travis Hunter hits that wall in the same way, based on the way that he's been used in college and the fact that we haven't seen anything like him before. The other factor for me that convinces me he can do both is at the end of games, the way he impacted the offense and defense, some in the same game, some not, but he made game-changing, winning plays at the end of games on both sides of the ball. Clutch moments. He's making big catches for touchdowns or getting them down towards the goal line in the fourth quarter. Tight window ball games. He's punching the football out at the goal line, forcing fumbles. He's finding interceptions, and he's not giving up first downs. The guy only gave up 6 first downs all season last year while defending a receiver. That's crazy. And then he'll turn around and put up 100 yards receiving. And I like the fact that he plays through injury as often as he does, or he fights back to play as fast as he possibly can. It was a ruptured spleen or something like that that he suffered. This was a year and a half ago, year 1 at Colorado. They hit on the sideline against Arizona State, maybe, is who they were playing. And, I mean, it was a dirty hit. He didn't make a big deal about it. I think he was out 3 or 4 weeks, maybe. Right back. I love that. And that was whenever Colorado was not playing very well. They were hitting, they started well and then finished in the tank. Not this year. Heisman Trophy winner. Shador's a first-round pick as well. Deion's getting looks from the NFL. He's back at Colorado. And he's got the program on a march towards things that are even better than where they've reached right now. I love the whole story. I love even more the idea that Travis Hunter plays 2 positions. Here's why you draft him and you leave that door open. Not just cracked, it's open. It's because there are situations where, as a coach, as a general manager, that's why you draft him, for the situational player that he is. He's a corner. You know, I think there are teams that see him as a wide receiver. I think the vast majority of the league sees him as a quarterback. But he's really both. Because in the fourth quarter, most of the NFL games are a possession game, 8 points or less. He's on the field for me at wide receiver. I've got packages for him at wide receiver in the clutch moments because we've seen him make those plays at the end of ball games, and he's playing both sides of the football for me in that moment. I don't have to go into a season with him as a rookie and say, here are both playbooks, consume it, be detailed, be ready. There's just not enough time for him to do all that. But can you give him a portion of the Travis Hunter package that you're going to use him for and elevate your team to, when you get the football, you're down by a possession, you can go and move the football down the field to get the score you want or set up a field goal? Yes. So I would not pigeonhole this to he's defense, he's a corner for us. Don't do that. Because sometimes you're going to need a big catch. Or if he's going to be a wide receiver, sometimes you want him to go out and be a lockdown defensive back for you in a spot where you know the offense is going to be throwing the football downfield. Because the guy doesn't give up very much. And who knows, maybe sometimes you need a big return in a sport that, well, got rid of the return game. ACC, Florida State, Clemson. They're expected to settle lawsuits that has been kind of underneath the surface now for over a year. They are reaping the benefit, the ACC here, of what Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti have been doing behind the scenes, in my opinion. Florida State, for the longest, was just they were just a loner in their fighting to get more money from the ACC. They are at a disadvantage. Programs in the ACC are getting far less. This is a win for the ACC. Florida State, no matter what they get in this settlement, is not going to be totally pleased with things because they didn't get the knock at the door from the Big Ten or the SEC to join. I think they got word back that you're going to have to go independent. That wasn't right. That wasn't right for them. Clemson joined, but only so if they did get a settlement, which is what they're getting, they would get more. I think Clemson benefits from joining when they did. Florida State, most will view this as a loss for them, quite frankly. Clemson joins and gets part of the settlement that otherwise the other programs don't see. And ESPN, they wanted to pay $350 million less per year in the negotiations with Major League Baseball. We know that they're leaving, they're parting ways after this upcoming season with Major League Baseball. And $350 million less per year for the MLB product, considering that they just signed a massive contract with the NBA. What was $2 billion or something moving forward for what they're going to pay for the basketball profession versus baseball. Baseball is very regional. The ratings in the local markets for baseball, they are much better locally than your NBA franchise. Nationally, the NBA draws more eyeballs than baseball. And that's because the star power, generally, if you turn on a game with the Lakers, you're going to see LeBron most of the time. The whole, rest management and all that stuff, that's out the window in some of these nationally televised games. If you turn on the NBA nationally, the star players are going to be scoring points most of the time. In Major League Baseball, Ohtani, it doesn't happen often. He's maybe a bad example. Ohtani may go 0 for 4. May not play well. You're not guaranteed to see the stars ball out. They do the majority of the time. But locally, you can see the Houston Astros draw better than the Houston Rockets because of the regional aspect. So I think from the national audience, ESPN's making the right call because they want to draw in the national audience. But from the local angle, that's where you can see pay for your team, Major League Baseball jump in and make a big move to have all Houston Astros fans pay a premium price to see their team. I don't know where they're going to go with this, but it's clear that ESPN wanted the national audience and the uptick there more than they wanted the regional audience. Streaming services, here we go.